institution is.
The Black Panthers continued their struggle, working outside the system. In Brooklyn, New York, Black and Latino parents challenged the established order, working within the system. They demanded the power to run their neighborhood schools, to improve their children's future.
The children are ready to work. They come to school to work. And when they get to school, the teachers, they don't know what to do. The first thing they say, we don't understand the children. Well, they will try to understand the children. These problems will exist. The children aren't stupid. They know when the teachers are there to help them.
Well, when my family moved here from Birmingham in 1965, they came from totally segregated schools. The children were all black, the teachers were all black, the principals were all black. One of my sons was above the national average in mathematics. But when he came to the schools here in Brooklyn, within 1 year, he was flunking math. And I went to the school to find out why. The teacher said my son was doing fine. I said, he's not bringing home assignments, and he's flunking math, and he came here from Alabama, and he was ahead of the national average, and you're telling me he's doing fine. Something is wrong. In New York City, only half of the children in Black and Latino neighborhoods finished high school. To make the schools work for their children, parents in the Ocean Hill, Brownsville section of Brooklyn planned to take charge. In the beginning, city officials were hopeful.
This decentralization plan does for our city schools in New York exactly what any stable, good school in any suburb has, which is to involve the parents sufficiently so they have a stake in the whole process of schools, and that's all we seek to do.
In 1967, with support from the Ford Foundation, the city made Ocean Hill, Brownsville an experimental district. An interracial governing board, elected by the community, chose educator Rhodey McCoy to lead the experiment. He became the first black superintendent in New York City.
The black people in this community have assumed the responsibility for their schools to try to improve and set the stage for quality education in an urban setting. This was what the experiment was designed to do. This is the reason that the parents became involved. It was a joy to go to a board meeting. Not only were the board members present, but the community folk were sitting around. And they had as much input as the board members. And it was always on a positive note. How do we help the youngsters?
Before the experiment, 4 out of 5 teachers in the district were white. Now younger teachers, a number of them black, transferred to Ocean Hill, Brownsville. The students, 95% black and Latino, responded.
You felt more accepted. You weren't the outsider in your own school. They were part of your environment. I mean, they were black. You can identify with them, and they can identify with you. It's as simple as that. There's no big mystery.
At first, the newly formed Teachers Union, the United Federation of Teachers, supported the experiment. But with administrative decisions now being made by the community, the teachers were worried.
It was supposed to be an experiment in an involvement of teachers and parents, and suddenly decisions started to get made and no one knew how they were made or where they were made. So there was a lot of wariness on the part of teachers.
Albert Shanker, the UFT president, questioned where decentralization of the schools might lead.
Under the new proposal, teachers and supervisors would be hired on the basis of interview by local people. And this would mean that New York City would be faced with the same problem that a lot of other areas are, namely where local people don't want whites, there won't be any whites teaching. Where they don't want any blacks, there won't be any blacks. Where they don't want Jews or Italians or Irish or anybody else. We will essentially develop within New York City a series of school systems that are more segregated than the school system is at the present time. And I say that that is the beginning of destruction of our school system.
Through the 1967-1968 school year, the community board worked to assemble an integrated teaching staff. Some tenured teachers resisted neighborhood control of schools. The community board faced a dilemma.
In May, the local board had its regular meeting. I guess we were having meetings at that point about every 2 weeks. And on the agenda that night, McCoy had put an item, the transfer of 13 teachers and also some assistant principals. I guess there was 5 or 6 of them.
And we sat down and talked to the governing board member of the school and the principal of the school, and we came to the conclusion that these people were not going to work well in the system. And they had also demonstrated that they were opposed to the experiment.
We were asking teachers to make an extra effort to get along with our kids, to teach our kids, and if there was any problem, to possibly visit in the homes. Well, the union didn't, this wasn't in their contract, they didn't have to do any of these things.
There was discussion, there was disagreement, there was a vote.
And we finally came to a conclusion that so that we could have a demonstration district, this is like 8 months after it had begun, that some of these people would have to be transferred, would have to go. But again, transferring teachers from one district to another with the Board of Education was something that was very ordinary. If a teacher was having problems, he would simply call up the superintendent of schools down at Livingston Street, and the person would be transferred. No questions were asked. But when McCoy tried to do it, of course, that created the scene of the century.
Teachers argued that the transfers were illegal. The city agreed. The dismissed teachers attempted to return to Junior High School 271, but community members refused to let them in.
Sit down, Mr. Goldberg. So what you want here? You received a letter from the governing board, right? This is the parents and the community. So you let your average shaker continue running your life and keep on making it. You're not coming in school.
Well, there's 19 and there are many more, but we figured we'd start slowly. These 19 have been knocking the program, have been causing trouble in the schools. We have people that are telling the black children that the Puerto Ricans are against them and the Puerto Ricans are against the blacks. We have to take steps to keep these people out, to make sure these people are not allowed in, to miseducate our kids, because if we allow this, then we're condoning it because we're paying their salaries.
You're sabotaging the classes. Now, I tried to find out what she meant by that. Do you know? The charges that was made previously, or the statement that's been made previously, is that you're sabotaging the project. Now, if that means questioning some of the actions of the governing board, then we must plead guilty for this. We have not been in complete agreement with everything they've done. Obviously, we're not in agreement with what they've done now. At no time had anybody mentioned that there was a problem with my service, or for that matter, with any of the people who were named, or certainly the majority of them. I didn't know them all. But here was this letter that ordered me out. So all I can say is I was dumbfounded.
350 union teachers walked out of Ocean Hill Brownsville schools to support the dismissed teachers. The community vowed to keep the schools open and maintain control.
So at one point the issue was just removing those teachers from our contest. And now the basic issue has to do with total community control over the school. What is our thing with this place? Community control over the schools. Personnel, finance, everything. Firing, absolutely.
September 1968, a new school year. The local board refused to take back the dismissed teachers. The teachers' union called a citywide strike. In the city of New York, education stopped for 1 million children. But in Ocean Hill, Brownsville, many teachers, black and white, crossed the picket lines in defiance of the union.
I came into the district because I want to be accountable to the community. If I'm not doing a job, then I want them to kick me out. See, this is the only way that we're going to bring about any change. We have to be accountable to someone. In the New York City school system, there's no problem. Nobody gets fired.
Well, the strike was a unifying factor in the black community. Groups that had previously been at each other's throats found themselves together at rallies and meetings surrounding Ocean Hill. It was an issue that whether you were CORE or the NAACP or the Urban League or the Black Panther Party or the Republic of New Africa, you could rally around this community issue. Everybody understood the importance of black children receiving a quality education.
During the strike of 1968, during the fall, probably the place that I spent most of my time was in front of 271. And the scene that I remember there most, and I've often thought of it, is a scene of children coming to school with their books, very intent, and I think they also understood the politics, just what was all going on here.
We came in from the Howard Avenue side, and we had to go through barricades to get to the school, and you look up and on the rooftops across the street from the school, the cops were with the helmet gear, and the playground was converted into a precinct. And walking up to the school, you have just mass confusion. You have the community people out there. You have the UFT. You were just amazed. You couldn't believe this was happening. You know, and you just went to school.
The teachers who remained in the classroom looked for new ways to teach the basic skills. Some also brought a new cultural awareness.
And today we're going to talk about the Yoruba culture of West Africa. We can trace, if we could trace our ancestral line back, most of us would go back to the Yoruba tribe. All right.
What the black teachers did do was to broaden us, our perspective of looking at things. We were no longer members of a small community called Ocean Hill, Brownsville. We were broadened to W.E.B. Du Bois, his readings, Langston Hughes, Malcolm X, Marcus Garvey, H. Rap Brown, Mao Zedong, the Red Book. I mean, we became international. And it was a good thing because black people are the third world. The third world is much larger than European history.
Outside of New York City schools, the battle was escalating. Community members questioned the union's commitment to the children. Union leaders charged extremists had taken over the experiment.
I think the public sees what's going on. Every single parent in the city of New York understands that if Mr. McCoy and the Ocean Hill Brownsville Governing Board succeed, that they will be next, that there will be people in their own communities who will see this as a model of success and move in and take over these institutions.
The city ordered the community board to allow the union teachers to return. Neighborhood leaders declared the community would decide.
The community has said it already. They don't want them there, so that means they're not coming in.
Is that because they're white?
I don't know. You have to ask the governing board. If it was up to me, they wouldn't be letting them simply because they weren't white. Right. You would keep them out just because they would. Why is that? Not because I don't think that any white person is interested in giving black children education. That's my particular feeling. What if they persist in trying to get in here? Well, by whatever means necessary, they're going to be kept out.
The teachers' union accused the community of anti-Semitism. In a city with a Jewish population of over 1 million, the charge carried enormous political weight. Although many Jewish teachers crossed picket lines and continued to teach, the accusation threatened city support of the experiment.
It is a well-known fact that the overwhelming majority of the teachers in New York City are of the Jewish faith. We have become the butt of their resentment, and it is, I think, but one simple step from resenting white people to resenting Jewish people, since most of the teachers are Jewish.
I didn't feel then, and I don't feel now, that anti-Semitism was a major part of that situation. It was a black-white confrontation. A lot of the teachers involved were Jewish, so some people drew that conclusion from the start.
Reverend Oliver, what about the business of anti-Semitism? What kind of scars do you think this is going to leave?
Yes, there will be scars left, it seems, because there have been so many untruths floating around. But the teachers must realize that the communities must be heard. The people of the community must be heard, and it apparently does not sit well with them to have to reckon with the local communities, but they will have to. And it's unfortunate that scars must come, but we have had 300 years of scars, and it's about time those scars were healing.
The community board refused to give up control of the classroom.
All of the people who care about you are here. The teachers are here. White and black teachers are here. There are some white teachers who are supporting us. We are grateful to all of our
friends and all people who believe in fairness to black and white people. Come in, children. Come in, children.
October 1968. Fearing a continuation of the citywide strikes, the New York City Board of Education suspended the Ocean Hill-Brownsville Community Board.
Mr. McCoy has indicated to me clearly that he intends to obey the directions of the suspended Ocean Hill-Brownsville School Board and not those of the Board of Education or the Superintendent of Schools. It is necessary, therefore, for me to relieve Mr. McCoy of his duties.
Confrontations broke out in other New York neighborhoods as blacks and Latinos protested the city's withdrawal of support for community control of schools.
This is a struggle against educational colonialism. They took over the school again. We were here with our people trying to run our school. Now, in defiance of that, the white community said, you gotta cool it, man, until we can give it to you. They're not gonna give us a darn thing. We're gonna take what belongs to us. We're gonna take what belongs to us.
The city and the teachers' union agreed. The experiment must end. The community board's power was taken away. But in the neighborhoods, many were moved by the struggle of the Ocean Hill-Brownsville community. From New York's 5 boroughs, thousands marched to City Hall in support of community control of schools.
There was a lot of disappointment on the parts of all of us, and I think we felt extremely bad. We had put an awful lot of effort into this. But I think this was a period, the 60s was such an incredibly interesting period that I think we realized also that something really good had happened.
Understand that these were community people who were disenfranchised with the system, who were nameless and faceless, who had never been incorporated and included, even though their children were mandated to go to school. For them to take on that responsibility was tremendous.
The demonstrators then headed across the Brooklyn Bridge to march to Board of Education headquarters in support of the community of Ocean Hill-Brownsville.
There was a lot of people yelling black power, power to the people. Power to the people I liked. Because I think that what we were going through, any poor neighborhood, regardless of the ethnic makeup, was going through the same thing. I like power to the people. People really needed to have some power, and we really needed as a school board to have power.
It was 1968. Communities across America, each choosing different paths, organized in the struggle for power. Power to the people was a promise as old as the nation. Now new voices demanded that the promise be fulfilled.